Welcome to the Ecofus Plus training videos. They're going to be given by David Odell, David Monroe, and myself. In this introductory chapter, chapter 1.1, we're going to cover databases, database structures, the objects within a database. The objects are called triangle groups. We also have what we call composite triangle groups. Triangle groups and composite triangle groups contain objects within themselves, and we'll discuss that also. A little bit about system navigation, creation of a new database, and communication between two databases. Indeed, communication between two databases has the same intuitive feel as communicating between two subfolders where you might be using Windows Explorer. You highlight a particular file, you grab it, and then drop it into another subfolder. Well, Ecofus Plus works in the same way. Now, a database can either be remote, it sits on a server subfolder, and it then becomes shareable amongst the various clients, or a database could be local, it just sits on your own machine, and later on you'll see how we can communicate between these two databases. Ecofus in the background uses either Oracle, SQL Server, MS Access, or Interbase in the background. The Ecofus database actually looks the same whether in the background it's using MS Access or any other one of those database management systems. I guess we didn't want to reinvent the wheel, and so Ecofus does use one of those engines. Okay, let's talk a little bit about databases. So let's go to the system itself and open it. So if you open the system or invoke the system, it looks like this. There's a number of tabs: database tab, triangle group tab, PTF tab, MPTF. These are the different modeling frameworks that we'll discuss. Now, when you go to open a database, you can either click on File and then choose Open, but we've already got a shortcut sort of buttons here, or icons for you. So if you point to the second button from the left, it says Open Database, and when you open the database, you get a list of databases that you've been working with recently, and there are aliases and so on. But of course, you won't have the same list as I have. You'll have a completely different list. But in your list, you should have Workbook 104A. If you don't, then you might have to go to your subfolder where it's located. This is probably where you've installed Ecofus Plus 10.4. Or you might also find the Workbook 104A on the training CD. So you'll have to go from there, put it into a particular subfolder, and then you'll have to add alias, and then it's an MS Access database, and then you browse for it. Okay, let me cancel that. Cancel. Now, if you do have it, you double click on it to open it, and you should have something like what I have. I mean, I've played with my database a little bit, so I might have some things, some objects in it that you don't have in yours. Okay, in the database, you have a listing of triangle groups. You see on the left, on the right window pane, the left column, you'll see triangle group. So you have a listing of triangle group alphabetically. You also have a number of variables already defined in your database, like line of business, net gross. You've got exemplary, multiple, client name, coverage, whatever. If you click on the variables tab, these are the variables in your database: line of business, net gross, notes, exemplary, multiple, just some variables we've made up. Client name, okay. Credibility obviously is not a client name, but I've created this particular attribute corresponding to that particular variable, coverage, inflation, and so on. Currency. You might not have all these variables. That doesn't matter because we're going to create some soon. If you go back to the Triangle Group tab here, click on that, you can look at your database now at the objects in the database, which are called triangle groups or composite triangle groups. We have what we call basic triangle groups. These are these ones. The composite is really a link. A composite of triangle groups is a link to basic triangle groups. For instance, this one here that also has the burgundy triangle colors are composite. B all is a composite. Comp NNG is a composite. In fact, if you go to the variable type of TG, click on the plus sign, you'll get the branches. You click on basic. These are basic TGs. Click on composite. These are composite TGs. These are all the composite TGs that you are likely to have in your database. Let's go back to the tree structure and click on line of business, the plus sign, and then you can select DO and EO, directors and officers, errors and omissions, private PPA, BPA, private passenger automobile, auto BI, workers' comp, other liabilities occurrence. This is kind of Schedule P type data. If you click, say, on client name and you select, no, let's go back to line of business on the plus sign, and then if you want to drill further down, so once you've selected, say, workers, let's take, well, there's not much there, is there? Home and contents, there isn't much there. Okay, let's select medical malpractice. Now you can drill further down on the plus sign, and we can select, say, multiple. So there's multiple segment. That's the only value for medical malpractice. So click on segments. Where is the variable segments? You probably have to scroll to the right. Oh, it's far out, isn't it? Can't see. Sorry, variable medical malpractice, sorry, segments. Multiple segments, it's there. I missed it. Of course, you can take this variable multiple, grab it, and push it to the left. You can see it's there now. Push it one more to the left. Doesn't it go to net and gross? Can I go above net and gross? So it goes first. You can do that. You can change the order. Okay? But that change in order is just temporary. I've got line of business now. Multiple is the next one. That's just temporary. Another way of doing a search, especially if you've got a large database, is you might go to Query Overview and say, double-click on line of business and type in, say, D. Okay? That's another way of doing it. If you don't double-click on line of business, but instead use your Control key and click on the plus sign, it gives you the choices of which values for that variable. I would just do that. Just grab these. Okay. Well, not many. Just another way of doing a search. Okay. Now let's get rid of that. You can clear all. So you have a tree view, one way of doing a search, or a query view. Let's go back to variables. Let's add a new variable. Let's call it new variable, and let's call it actually. So we have a new variable called actually. Let's add a few names. Joe and Bob. Okay. Let's go back to triangle groups. Now let's suppose we select 1M, 1M excess 1M, 2M, all 1M, all 1M excess 1M, all 2M. Right button of your mouse is always, anywhere you are in the system, a context-sensitive shortcut menu. Go to Assign Values, Click on Actuary, select Bob. Now, if you go to your tree structure, you'll see there's a new variable at the bottom called Actuary. Click on the plus sign, click on Bob, and these are the 3 triangle groups to which you assigned the value Bob to the variable Actuary. Okay? You can always go back, go to Variables, and delete the variable Actuary. Right button of your mouse, delete. Yes. Do you want to delete Actuary? Yes. So the variable Actuary is gone. When the database window is active, you'll see that the database tab is active with its various options here. If you click on a triangle group, you'll see there are various options that you can run through. One option is New Triangle Group, Open Triangle Group, Assign Values to a Triangle Group, Delete a Triangle Group. But most of these options are also available if you click with the right button of your mouse anywhere on the white. So let's maximize this. When you click with the right button of your mouse, you can see new would be a new triangle group. You can collapse, expand, combine, and so on. You get your context sensitive shortcut menu. And some of these options actually appear here. Let's open the triangle group. So go to a triangle called Comp A. If you're here, you can also always click on the letter C and it'll take you to C. Comp A. Now one way of opening it is just double clicking on it. And it has objects itself. So let's look at the various tabs within the triangle group. Before we do that, let me show another option. If you go to the left side and look at these icons, there's one that you point to here, bottom left. It says Tile Vertically. Click on Tile Vertically. So the 2 windows are tiled vertically. If the triangle group window is active, the corresponding triangle group tab is active with its options. If you make the database active, just click with your mouse on it. So now the workbook 104A is active, then the database tab is active. So as you switch from one to the other, the tabs actually change. Okay, let's look inside the triangle group. So I'm going to maximize it. And it itself has tabs. It's got a Models tab, Data Sets, Composite Data Sets, Triangles, Exposure Inflation Premiums, Dimensions, Notes, Reports and Documents. Let's move from the right. Reports and Documents. Well, you could have links to reports here and documents. You also have a set of notes. You can type anything there. It's like a word processor. You can copy and paste. But remember that anything you copy and paste into the notes resides inside this triangle group. Then you've got dimensions. That would be the dimensions of each array in the triangle group. This is quarterly by quarterly data. You've got vectors for exposure, inflation, and premiums. You also have triangles, so click on the triangles. Okay, these are listed triangles, paid losses, case reserve estimates, number of claims reported, different types of triangles. You can have as many types as you like. You can actually define new types. Let's go back to the database. One way of going back to the database is just clicking on the database tab. There's only one database that you could use at only one particular time unless you're transferring. Click on the database tab. Now within the database tab, can you see our triangle types? Click on that. Now, I'm not sure that you'll have all of these, but let's create a new triangle type. On the left are the system types that are already defined. These are some additional ones that you might have that are user defined. Let's create another one. Let's call it, say, new dollar type, and let's call it junk. Okay? Let's go back now to the triangle group. One way of going back to the triangle group, which is part of navigation, is you click with the right button on the triangle group tab. then select the one. In this case, there's only one you want to look at. Right button of your mouse on the Triangle Group tab, select Comp A. Now, if you click with the right button of your mouse anywhere on the white, you have New Triangle. That option is also available for this button here. If you click with the downward arrow, scroll down, you'll see Junk Junk. It actually gives it the acronym JJI. Incremental, yes, suppose it's incremental, and if you click on OK, there's a triangle, but it doesn't have any values in it. Close it. With your right button of your mouse, delete it. Click on it and then choose delete. Yes. Another way of creating a new triangle is you go to this button here, which should say, so if you point to this triangle here, it should say new triangle. If you click on it, you come up with the same options. But I think very often just the right click of your mouse button to bring up the context-sensitive shortcut menu is probably faster. You can also create a new exposure vector on the E, on the I, a new inflation vector, P, a new premium. But if you click on the Exposure Inflation Premiums tab with the right button of your mouse, you see you'll also have a choice of creating a new exposure, a new inflation vector, a new premium vector. Let's go back to the Triangles tab. Pretty easy. Let's open the first triangle, a paid loss triangle. Well, that's the data. If you want a different view of the data, you can scroll with the right button of your mouse, change view to accident by calendar periods, where now the columns are in fact the calendar periods. It's just a transpose of the same triangle, which is usually presented as accident period by development period. So let's go back to the standard view of the triangle with the right button of your mouse, change view to accident period by development period. Let's close the triangle. So there are triangles here. Then we have what we call data sets. Click on data sets. A data set is a triangle and an exposure. So if we were to model this particular triangle, we'd be using that exposure, and we would normalize the data where you divide each accident year by its corresponding exposure. So a data set is just more than just a triangle. If you open the data set, you'll see that you've got the triangle and the selected exposure inflation premiums tab within the data set. Okay, let's close this data set. Alright, you can also have an associated inflation if you want to adjust the data by economic data to find any additional inflation, an associated premium if you want to calculate loss ratios, and usually also an associated triangle. Within one triangle group, you might have two incremental triangles, two cases of estimates, two incurred. So you've got to associate the paid losses with the correct corresponding case estimates triangle or incurred data. Okay, so that when the system creates some summary statistics, it knows what is the associations. If you then go to the Models tab, then there are models. You'll have all these models also. There are models for paid losses. You'll understand models later. If you click on the right side in the left window pane, you get the models for all the triangles. If you just click on the paid losses, those models. Cases of estimates, those models. Number of claims reported, there aren't any. Number of claims closed, they're there. Paid losses cumulative, there aren't any models. Okay? So navigating within the triangle group, let's look at it again. You've got these objects. What are the objects? You could have reports, links to documents, notes, exposure inflation premiums. Triangles are objects inside the triangle group. We will deal with composite data sets later. Data sets are objects. Models are objects. Let's close the triangle group. We're in the database. Let's go back in the database. Go to triangle group tab. So we're looking at the tree structure. Okay, let's suppose we want to create a new database. So you go to New Database. Just click on that, New Database. It's the button most to the left, New Database. You got to save it in some subfolder, and it's going to be by default an Access database. Oh, well, let me just save it here. I'll just call it Test. Test. Save. It asks you whether you want to close the existing database which is open. You cannot actually look at two databases and model data in two databases at the same time. You can only view two databases at the same time if one of them is used for transfer. So let's go to, do you want to close Workbook 104A? So yes. So now you've got a new database. By default, it already has two variables. Let's go to the Variables tab and delete them. Those two variables. Now we want to open the Workbook 104A because we want to use that for transfer. So there's a special button for that. If you look under the Database tab, the second button from the left, Open Database for Transfer, and select Workbook 104A. Incidentally, now that you've created Database Test, can you see Test is now in the list of aliases? So you don't have to search for it in different subfolders. The listing here facilitates finding something. You don't have to go and search for different subfolders. Once you create a new database or search for one by browsing and then opening an interface, it's included in the list. So open Test. Oh, the database is already open. That's not the way I want to open, right? So let's go to, I selected the wrong one, Open Database for Transfer. Again, second button from the left. Open Work 104A, open. Now I want to tile both vertically. So you go to the button, bottom left, tile vertically. Now the database for transfer is called Transfer Database. It's got two columns, Workbook 104A. Can you see that when it's active, the buttons under the Database tab are not really active? Means you can't manipulate within this database. You can transfer in one direction or the other direction. That's all you can do. You can model anything in the new database Test while having the other one open for transfer. But you can't do any modeling on the left side, on my left side, the database, Transfer Database Workbook 1A. Why don't we go to the variable called multiple, click on the plus sign to look at the branches. You've got, click on LRBs. Now we want to highlight all these LRBs. So you click on the top one, left button of your mouse, and then use Control A, and that will highlight everything, all the triangle groups and the composites in that branch of the tree, multiples, LRBs. Now to transfer them, you have to grab, not somewhere down to the right here, you need to grab any one of these multiple triangles here on the left, the icons. So grab that with your left mouse button and move it to the right side. But when I try to do that, can you see it has the stop sign? The reason for that is that on the right side, the tab is actually variables. So what we need to do now is actually click on the Triangle Groups tab in the database called Test. Now go back and grab any one of these triangles and move it all the way to the window pane, on the right window pane, and that will allow you to paste. It will also take the composites. When it takes the composites, it also takes any triangle group that belongs to the composites. Okay, now I want to maximize the window, the right pane window, and I want to get rid of this sort of tree structure. So in the middle bar here, if you click, a hand comes up. I'll just wait for you. See the hand coming up in the window frame here. Double click on that. So we've only got the right window pane, and do the same thing on the left. So in this window frame here in the center, a hand comes up, double click there. Now on the right side, I'm going to make active, say, BCal, and then I've got an option at the top that says Show TG Preview. So it gives me a preview at the bottom. Let's do the same thing on the other side. BCal, make that active, and Show TG Preview. Okay? In your database test, delete the model PTF good with the right button of your mouse. Shortcut, context-sensitive menu, delete. Grab the model on the other side with your mouse and drop it on top of a triangle on the right side. See, models are also objects. They are, you can grab them. Sometimes two segments of business have got very similar structure. So instead, well, we've got a modeling wizard. Instead of modeling it independently, you might just grab the model you've got for the other segments and drop it on top of the new of this other segment, and see whether it works or not. Okay, you can do the same thing with data sets. You can do the same thing with composite data sets, and so on. Okay, let's close the database for transfer, and remove show hide TG preview. So let's hide it. And now the window frame on the left, we want to see the tree structure also, so we double click here again and maximize that. Let's open a BAll. BAll is a composite, so let's open that. And it has a very different tabs to a basic triangle groups. One of the tabs is just triangle groups, and it is actually linked to all these triangle groups. This is something we're going to study in a subsequent video when we look at composite models. Okay, let's close that. Now I advise you very strongly, you might want to revise this particular video or just play around yourself with the database, the workbook database, add variables, change variables, open various triangle groups, navigate through the tree structure, whatever you like. Just have some fun.